Okay, so let's try to unpack this. Because if you follow the arts or politics or, well, honestly, if you've been paying attention at all, you saw this headline.
You couldn't miss it.
You couldn't miss it. The Kennedy Center, the National Cultural Center of the United States, is shutting its doors.
And not for a holiday weekend.
No, not for a deep clean. We are talking about, what, an estimated 2 years? Minimum.
It's a huge deal. To give you some sense of scale, it's like if the British Museum just closed.
Yeah.
Or if the Sydney Opera House just went dark indefinitely for renovations.
Exactly. That's the level of disruption we're looking at here. So today we're doing a deep dive into the report from Midas Touch that's been covering this whole saga.
Right.
The headline is pretty direct. Trump shuts down Kennedy Center after mass resignations.
And they use all caps and 3 exclamation points.
They do. So our mission today is really to figure out how we got here. How did we go from this premier, bustling arts center to a boarded-up building in what feels like the blink of an eye?
It really does feel that fast. The timeline is incredibly compressed. This isn't some closure that was planned 10 years out. It's the result of about a year of really aggressive changes and, well, a total collision between the current administration and the entire artistic community.
Okay, so let's start with the announcement itself. February 1st, 2026. Donald Trump posts that the center is closing, but I want to look at the justification he gives because it's very specific.
It is. He says that after a 1-year review, they decided a complete rebuilding is necessary.
A complete rebuilding.
Right. The official line is all about quality. The statement says that keeping it open during the work would mean lower quality and a longer timeline. They're arguing that this temporary closure,
temporary in quotes,
right, for 2 years, will get them a much faster and higher quality result. The goal, they say, is to make it the finest performing arts of its kind anywhere in the world.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second. The building opened in 1971. That's over 50 years ago. So isn't it possible it just actually needs a gut renovation? Maybe the pipes are shot or something.
That would be a perfectly reasonable thought if this were happening in a vacuum. Major institutions do get renovations,
right,
but they usually do it in phases.
Yeah.
They'll close the concert hall, but keep the opera house open. They don't just evict everyone at once. And you have to remember, the Kennedy Center has been running almost continuously for 50 years. It barely even closed during the peak of the pandemic.
So the all-at-once approach is the real red flag here.
That and the whole rebranding context, this isn't just a physical renovation. It's a total identity overhaul. Remember, back on December 18th, 2025, just a few months ago, the center was unilaterally renamed.
The Trump Kennedy Center, that part is still just wild to me. The building is legally the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. It's a literal memorial. Can you even do that? Just change the sign.
Well, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The journalist Jim Acosta, he weighs in on this heavily in the report. He points out that legally, a president can't just rename a national memorial on their own. That's something Congress has to do. Acosta actually calls changing the physical signs vandalism.
Vandalism. Wow.
Because it completely bypasses the entire legislative process.
So we've got a potentially illegal name change and now a total shutdown. And the report we're looking at, it seems to imply that the construction is just a convenient excuse.
Exactly. They quote a commentator, Mike Rothschild, who suggests the center has been ruined so fast that the renovation is just a way to hide the disaster.
So if you close it for 2 years...
Or maybe longer, right?
Yeah.
Potentially the rest of the term. Then you don't have to report on ticket sales. You don't have to answer questions about why the seats are empty.
You just put up a sign that says, "Pardon our dust, we're building something beautiful," and lock the doors.
It's the ultimate under construction page for a website that's never coming back.
Which brings us to the business record. Because if they need to hide the numbers, the report spends a lot of time contrasting the Kennedy Center's past with its present.
And this is so key to the story. Before this administration, the Kennedy Center was a successful, solvent organization. It's a huge operation, budget over $200 million. It wasn't failing.
But the source argues it's been, what's the phrase, run into the ground.
Run into the ground in record time.
And to back that claim up, the report it lists this. "I can only call it a greatest hits of past business ventures." And I'd honestly forgotten about half of these.
It is quite a list.
Okay, so we all know the big ones, right? Trump steaks, Trump vodka, but it goes so much deeper. Trump ice, Trump mortgages.
Don't forget Trump table water.
Trump table water. Right. But then it gets into the really strange stuff. I saw Trump princesses and I thought, okay, like a beauty pageant or something.
Yeah, not quite. The Trump princess was a yacht.
A yacht.
A massive luxury yacht, yeah. It originally belonged to Adnan Khashoggi. Trump bought it, renamed it, wanted it to be this floating symbol of the brand, but, it follows the pattern the report lays out. It ended up being turned over to creditors.
So another high-profile asset, you slap the name on it, and then it fails.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the list goes on. Trump vitamins, and then, well, the one that really stood out to you.
The urine test kits.
Yeah.
We have to pause on that. Trump urine test kits.
It was a licensing deal, apparently. But it is on the list of failed ventures that the report cites.
I have so many questions about the pitch meeting for that product.
Probably for the best to just let that one go.
Okay, fine. But the point the report is making, it isn't just to list bad ideas. It's drawing a clear line.
Yeah.
It's saying, look at the casinos, look at the airline, the magazine.
The commentary in the source is basically asking, if you have a track record of bankrupting casinos, which are literally designed to print money, why should anyone believe the Trump Kennedy Center is going to be the finest in the world? The skepticism is just. It's rooted in a very long history.
It's a harsh take, but the data points are there. But look, money is one thing. The bigger problem, and where this deep dive gets a lot darker, is the people. You need people to put on a show.
And that's where the damage becomes maybe irreversible. You can fix a budget. It's much, much harder to fix a brain drain.
So let's look at that timeline again. February 2025, the entire previous board is fired. President Deborah Rutter, Chairman David Rubenstein, gone.
And these are not low-level people. Rubenstein is a huge philanthropist in the arts world. When you fire him, you're not just losing an administrator, you're losing his connections, his fundraising, his entire network.
And in his place, they bring in Rick Grinnell.
A political operative,
Yeah.
not an arts administrator. And his approach, according to the source, has been, let's say, aggressive. He's reportedly been threatening to sue performers who cancel.
That sounds like a great way to win over the artistic community. Play your violin or my lawyer will call you.
It creates a toxic environment from day one. But the real symbol of the chaos, for me, has to be the 5-day VP.
Oh my God, Kevin Couch?
Yes. He's appointed Senior VP of Artistic Programming. I mean, this is the job. You are curating the culture for the entire nation.
And he was there for 5 days.
5 days.
That's not a tenure. That's a weekend pass. You barely have time to find the good coffee machine in 5 days.
It just screams deep structural dysfunction. When a senior executive walks out that fast, it means they looked under the hood, saw the engine was on fire, and just ran.
And of course, that trickles down. If the management is a revolving door, the talent gets spooked. And the wave of cancellations the report details is just, it's staggering.
It's a who's who, really. Renee Fleming, probably the most famous soprano in America.
Yeah.
She's out. The Martha Graham Dance Company. Shonda Rhimes. Issa Rae.
And the National Opera. I mean, they announced they're moving out completely. They've been at the Kennedy Center since it opened in 1971.
Moving an entire opera company isn't like moving apartments. You can't just rent a truck. We're talking sets, costumes, orchestras. You need an orchestra pit.
Right.
There are maybe 1 or 2 other venues in all of D.C. that can even house them. For them to say, we're leaving, means they would rather be homeless than stay in that building. That is a decision born of desperation.
And speaking of principled stands, the story about Philip Glass really stood out to me.
That was a powerful moment in the report.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Philip Glass is a giant of modern music. He was set to premiere his Symphony No. 15, and the subject of the symphony was Abraham Lincoln.
The great emancipator, the man who held the Union together.
And Glass pulled it. He actually said, and this is a quote, that the values of the Kennedy Center today are in direct conflict with the message of the symphony.
Just think about that for a second. He's not saying the pay is bad or the acoustics are off. He is saying, I cannot perform a tribute to Abraham Lincoln in this specific building anymore.
He's saying the building itself has become a symbol of something Lincoln would have fought against.
It completely shifts the conversation from just bad management to ideological warfare.
Which, of course, brings us to the biggest show of the last decade, Hamilton.
You can't have this conversation without Hamilton.
They canceled way back on March 5th, 2025. But they released this statement that I think is so important. They didn't just say, we disagree. They actually wrote a defense of institutional neutrality.
What's so interesting is how they framed it. They said, political disagreement is normal. It's democratic. They weren't pulling out over tax policy.
Right.
They said the Kennedy Center was supposed to be a sacred neutral space. And they pointed to the purge of professional staff as the moment that nonpartisanship ended.
They even mentioned its bipartisan founding. Eisenhower, JFK, Nixon were all involved. They argued that these new actions imposed a culture they just couldn't be a part of.
It goes back to that idea of the public square. The Kennedy Center was where everyone was supposed to be able to meet. And Hamilton is basically arguing that by politicizing the leadership, the administration kicked everyone else out of the square.
And then we see that exclusion happening, literally, with the U.S. Marine Band.
The president's own. Yeah, this is a really disturbing detail in the report.
So the Marine Band withdrew from an event. It was called the Equity Arc Wind Symphony.
Right. An Equity Arc is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a project to highlight underrepresented composers. The creator, Kevin Day, said the whole point was the equity and diversity of voices.
And the Marine Band pulled out because of that theme.
The report says they withdrew because of diversity, equity, and inclusion orders from the federal level.
Hold on. So the president's own band is now forbidden from playing music if the concert's theme is diversity.
That is what the report alleges. It is a form of active gatekeeping. It confirms the fears of so many artists that this was never just about a name on a building. It's about dictating what art is acceptable and what isn't.
This leads us right into the warning from Ben Folds. He was the artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra. He resigned way back in February 2025.
Right at the beginning.
But he gave this interview that the report quotes a lot, and honestly, it's chilling. He offers this systemic analysis of what's happening. He doesn't see it as incompetence. He sees it as a strategy.
He calls it an authoritarian first step.
Yeah, and he makes this really fascinating point. He says the administration knew they couldn't just steamroll late-night hosts or news networks first. He says they thought they would run over us first.
The arts as a soft target. Folds argues that they appointed people with zero arts experience for one reason, to run over it. But the goal isn't just to ruin a few concerts. In his view, the goal is commandeering the arts as a test run for controlling other forms of expression.
That's a testing ground.
Exactly. If you can successfully silence the National Cultural Center, if you can tell the Marine Band what music is forbidden, you've set a precedent. You've normalized the idea that the government gets to tell culture what to say.
He literally draws a line from what's happening at the Kennedy Center to people like Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel.
If you control the culture, you control the message. He's warning that this is just the first move on the board.
And his advice to other artists is incredibly direct. Stand up and express yourself. He compares it to the shut up and sing era.
The Dixie Chicks, yeah.
Yeah, but he says this is different. He says artists now have to be reporters.
That's such a powerful metaphor. Artists as reporters of the truth. He's saying when traditional media is under pressure, art itself becomes a way to tell the truth. A play, a song, a symphony. It can speak truth to power in a way a news report sometimes can't.
It's a heavy, heavy warning. And when you look at the public reaction in the report, it seems like that feeling of loss it's very real for people in D.C.
Yeah, the source quotes one resident who just says, "Democracy died today." They call the renaming a grifter sticking his name on top of a national monument.
There's also this idea of an identity crisis, too. The report says Americans just won't use the new name.
Right, Jim Acosta made that point, that sane, rational American people won't go along with it. But symbols matter. Even if people don't say the name, the sign is still there. So you have this symbolic conflict every time someone walks by that building.
Except now they can't even walk into the building. It's just dark.
And that's the reality we're left with.
So, to recap, because this is a lot, the Kennedy Center, or the Trump Kennedy Center, is shut down for at least 2 years. The board's gone. The staff has resigned. The artists have boycotted.
And in the fallout, the National Opera is basically homeless. The National Symphony Orchestra has no artistic leadership. And the premier stage for American culture is completely silent.
All for a renovation that critics in the report say is just a cover for a failed business.
When you connect all these dots, this really isn't about a construction project. It's a battle over the role of government in culture. It's forcing a question about whether our artistic institutions can actually survive this level of politicization.
Because the whole point of the Kennedy Center was that it was bipartisan. A Republican president and a Democratic Congress could sit in the same box and watch a ballet.
And when you shatter that neutrality, can the institution itself survive? That's the real question. Even if it reopens in 2 years or 4, will the artists come back? Can you just flip a switch?
You can't just undo a purge.
Exactly. Trust is much harder to rebuild than a concert hall. You can pour new concrete, but you can't pour credibility.
So here's the thought we want to leave you with today. Ben Folds warned that taking over the arts is the first step in controlling expression. Now that our National Cultural Center is dark, where does that battle move next? If the canary in the coal mine has stopped singing, what happens to the rest of the mine?
And on a practical level, if the Trump Kennedy Center ever does reopen, will it be a cultural center at all? Or will it just be an empty building with a very expensive, very controversial sign on it?
Something to think about. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay curious, keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time.